Hi, my name's Michael Che, and I'm going to tell you how to solve Cheryl's birthday and other similar problems using bubbles. Okay, what do I mean by bubbles? Well, it's just a kind of diagram which makes solving these problems much easier. They're also called knowledge partitions, and the idea is usually attributed to Robert Aumann. So say, for example, we have 3 dates, and that Cheryl's birthday is one of these dates. Say that Albert only knows the month, while Bernard only knows the day. So since Albert only knows the month, Albert cannot distinguish between January 1st and January 2nd. Okay. So therefore we put a little bubble around those 2 dates. Albert can tell if it's February 2nd, so we just put a bubble around February 2nd. These are Albert's bubbles. Okay, how about Bernard? Well, Bernard cannot distinguish between these 2 dates, January 2nd and February 2nd. Remember, Bernard only knows the day. Okay. So therefore, we put a bubble around those 2 dates. Bernard can tell whether it's January 1st, so we put a bubble around there. Okay, these are Bernard's bubbles. So here's Albert's bubbles, here are Bernard's bubbles. And remember, Albert only knows the month, Bernard only knows the day. And the idea here is that if 2 dates are in the same bubble, you can't tell them apart. So again, Albert only knows the month, so Albert can't tell whether it's January 1st or January 2nd. Bernard only knows the day, so Bernard can't tell whether it's January 2nd or February 2nd. Okay. If 2 dates are in different bubbles, you can. So for example, January 1st and January 2nd are in different bubbles for Bernard, so Bernard can tell them apart. He knows whether it's January 1st versus January 2nd. Okay. So let's use bubbles in our original Cheryl's birthday problem. This is the original problem from Singapore. Let's just look at the dates. Okay, I'm just going to write them down in this table. Okay. What are Albert's bubbles? Remember, Albert only knows the month. Okay, so Albert's bubbles, one of them is like this. Albert can't tell the difference between May 15th, May 16th, and May 19th, so he put all those in a single bubble. Similarly, he put the June dates in a bubble, the July dates, and August dates. These are Albert's bubbles. They represent what Albert knows about Cheryl's birthday. How about Bernard's bubbles? Bernard only knows the day. Okay, so for example here, if Bernard can't tell the difference between July 14th and August 14th, okay, so we put those in the same bubble, and we do something similar for the rest. Okay, these are Bernard's bubbles. Okay, so now we know about bubbles, and the next step is to talk about events. Okay, so what's an event? An event is just a set of possible dates. So for example, Cheryl's birthday is in January. That's an event which is comprised of these 2 dates here, January 1st and January 2nd. How about the event Cheryl's birthday is on the 2nd of the month? That's just these 2 dates here. And the event Cheryl's birthday is February 2nd is, of course, just this date here. Okay. What's interesting is that knowing Cheryl's birthday is also an event. Okay, so let's take our bubbles again. So when does a person know Cheryl's birthday? Okay, a person knows Cheryl's birthday when his bubble contains a single date. So for example, Albert knows Cheryl's birthday. Well, when does Albert's bubbles contain a single date? Just February 2nd, right? At February 2nd, that's when Albert knows Cheryl's birthday. At January 1st and January 2nd, Albert wouldn't know Cheryl's birthday. Okay. How about Bernard? When does Bernard know Cheryl's birthday? Well, you just look at Bernard's bubbles, and the only bubble which has a single date is January 1st. That's when Bernard knows Cheryl's birthday. Okay, so let's go to our original example of Cheryl's birthday. These are Albert's bubbles. When does Albert know Cheryl's birthday? Well, notice that Albert doesn't have any bubbles which contain a single date. So therefore, Albert never knows Cheryl's birthday. And the event Albert knows Cheryl's birthday is just the empty set. Okay. What's the event that Albert doesn't know Cheryl's birthday? Well, it's simply the opposite of all those, which is everything. Right? So Albert always does not know Cheryl's birthday. Okay. How about Bernard? These are Bernard's bubbles. Okay. When does Bernard know Cheryl's birthday? Well, when his bubbles contain a single date, which are these 2 dates up here. Okay. When does Bernard not know Cheryl's birthday? It's simply all these dates here. Okay. Okay, now that we know about bubbles and we know about events, the last step is to talk about knowing an event. And it turns out this is just another event. Okay, say we have Albert's bubbles and Bernard's bubbles, and say we have the event Cheryl's birthday is in January. When does Albert know that Cheryl's birthday is in January? Okay, well, we'll just take it step by step. At January 1st, say, we find that Albert's bubble stays inside the event. Okay, Albert's bubble around January 1st stays inside. What does this mean? It means that at January 1st, Albert knows it's either January 1st or January 2nd, but either way, he knows that we're still inside the original event, i.e. Cheryl's birthday is in January. So at January 1st, Albert knows that Cheryl's birthday is in January. So we put a little check mark there. Okay, how about January 2nd? At January 2nd, Albert's bubble around January 2nd still stays inside the event. Okay, at January 2nd, Albert knows that Cheryl's birthday is in January. So we put a little check mark there. Okay, so at January 1st and January 2nd, Albert knows that Cheryl's birthday is in January. It makes sense. Okay, so it's exactly these two dates which comprise the event. Albert knows Cheryl's birthday is in January. Okay, this is the event that Albert knows that Cheryl's birthday is in January. Okay, how about Bernard? When does Bernard know that Cheryl's birthday is in January? Okay, again, we'll do the same thing. Start January 1st. At January 1st, Bernard's bubble, just this little one here, and it stays inside the event. So at January 1st, Bernard knows that Cheryl's birthday is in January because the bubble stays inside. Okay, so therefore you put a little check mark in. Now how about January 2nd? At January 2nd, Bernard's bubble includes this February 2nd thing. It actually goes outside the event, right? At January 2nd, for all Bernard knows, it could be February 2nd, right? Remember, Bernard only knows the day, not the month. Okay, so at January 2nd, Bernard does not know that Cheryl's birthday is in January. So I'll put a little X there. Okay, so what is the event that Bernard knows that Cheryl's birthday is in January? Well, that only happens when the date is January 1st. So only January 1st does Bernard know that Cheryl's birthday is in January. Okay, so the event Bernard knows Cheryl's birthday is in January is just this date here. This is the only time Bernard knows Cheryl's birthday is in January. Okay, so starting with this event, original event, we figured out these events. So this is the event Albert knows Cheryl's birthday is in January. This is the event that Bernard knows that Cheryl's birthday is in January. Okay, and sum up, a person knows an event at a date if her bubble around the date stays inside the event. So we have a little check mark there. So what we do is we check all the dates, okay, and say we find one where the bubble goes outside, then we put a little X there. Say the bubble goes outside here, it's also an X. But say all the rest of the time the bubble stays inside. Okay, it's at those dates that the person knows the event. Okay. So this is the event. This is the event that the person knows the event. Again, a person knowing the event is an event in itself. Okay. All right, so going back, when Cheryl's birthday is in January, this is her original event. This is the event that Albert knows Cheryl's birthday is in January. This is the event that Bernard knows Cheryl's birthday is in January. Okay, how about the event that Albert does not know? Well, it's just the opposite, right, of knowing. So it's going to be February 2nd. When does Bernard not know Cheryl's birthday is in January? Well, it's simply these two dates here. Okay. All right, now we're ready to solve Cheryl's birthday problems in general. So let's look at our original Cheryl's birthday problem. So this is the first clue. Albert says, I don't know when Cheryl's birthday is, but I know that Bernard does not know too. So this is about Albert's knowledge, so we'll put Albert's bubbles in there. And the first thing we realize is, of course, Albert doesn't know when Cheryl's birthday is, right? Because Albert doesn't have any bubbles which are contain just a single date. So this whole first sentence is kind of irrelevant. The part which is important is when Albert says, I know that Bernard does not know too. Okay, how do we figure out what this means? Okay, so what we'll do is we'll, first of all, get rid of the two and simplify this. Okay, and now we'll think about what it means for Bernard to not know. What is this event? So this is about Bernard's knowledge. So we got to put Bernard's bubbles up there. When does Bernard not know? Okay, well, we did this already. This is when Bernard does not know, right? It's when his bubbles contain more than one element. Okay, so this is the event that Bernard does not know. All right. Now what does it mean for Albert to know that Bernard does not know? Okay, this is about Albert's knowledge, so we'll put Albert's bubbles up there. Remember, a person knows something when the bubble stays inside the event, right? You know an event when the bubbles stay inside the event. So at May 15th, Albert's bubble goes outside. So at May 15th, Albert does not know the event. Okay, Albert does not know that Bernard does not know. Similarly, at May 16th, the bubble goes outside. At June 17th, the bubble goes outside. However, at July 14th, the bubble stays inside. At July 14th, Albert knows that Bernard does not know. Similarly for July 16th and also the August dates. Okay, so the event that Albert knows that Bernard does not know is simply this event here. Okay, so let's clean up some stuff. This is the event that Albert knows that Bernard does not know. Okay, so now everything else is eliminated. Now we're left with this. Here's a second clue. Bernard says, at first, I didn't know where Cheryl's birthday is, but I know now. So this is about Bernard's knowledge, so let's put Bernard's bubbles up there. Bernard says, at first, I don't know when Cheryl's birthday is. Okay, so in other words, he's saying it couldn't have been these two dates up here, but we already eliminated those dates anyway, so that's kind of irrelevant, so this whole first line is irrelevant. The important part is Bernard says, I know now. So let's simplify the bubbles a bit. Bernard says, I know now. So what does it mean for Bernard to know now? Well, now, remember, Bernard knowing the birthday is simply those dates for which there's a bubble is just a singleton. It just contains a single date. So that's the event which Bernard knows. Okay. In other words, it can't be July 14th or August 14th because then Bernard would not know. Okay. So since Bernard knows now, this is what we're left with, and clean up some stuff. Now this is what we have. And then finally we have the third clue. Albert says, then I also know when Cheryl's birthday is. This is about Albert's knowledge, so we'll put Albert's bubbles. These top two bubbles are relevant. We'll simplify this. Okay, so now in this world, when does Albert know when Cheryl's birthday is? Albert knows when the bubble just contains a single date, and that's this there. That it only happens when the date is July 16th. Okay, we'll simplify. This is the answer. Cheryl's birthday is July 16th. Okay. All right. Let's do another problem to show the generality of our technique. So say Cheryl's birthday is either March 2nd, March 3rd, March 4th, April 2nd, April 3rd, or May 2nd. Say that Albert knows that Bernard doesn't know that Albert doesn't know Cheryl's birthday. Okay. What is Cheryl's birthday? Okay, so how do we solve this problem? What does this sentence even mean? But it turns out we'll just use our bubbles and do it like everything else. So the nice thing about the bubbles is it allows you to just work through it kind of mechanistically and not think about it too hard. Okay, so Cheryl's birthday, you're going to need some of these dates, so let's put them up in a table. What are Albert's bubbles? They look like that. Bernard's bubbles look like that. Okay, Albert knows that Bernard doesn't know that Albert doesn't know Cheryl's birthday. How do we figure out what this sentence means? Just take it step by step. Look at the end one. This is the most clear one. Albert doesn't know Cheryl's birthday. Okay, this is about Albert's knowledge, so we'll put Albert's bubbles there. Albert doesn't know Cheryl's birthday when the bubbles contain more than one element, right? So this is the event that Albert doesn't know Cheryl's birthday. for May 2nd, Albert would know. Okay, this is the event when Albert doesn't know Cheryl's birthday. Okay, now back it up. When does Bernard not know that Albert doesn't know Cheryl's birthday? Well, we put Bernard's bubbles up there. Okay. When does Bernard not know this event? Well, at March 4th, March 3rd, April 3rd, Bernard's bubbles stay inside. So in these dates, Bernard knows the event. The only time that Bernard doesn't know the event is over here, these three states. Okay. This is when Bernard doesn't know that Albert doesn't know Cheryl's birthday. Okay. We'll simplify a little bit. Now we'll back it up to the original one. Albert knows that Bernard doesn't know that Albert doesn't know Cheryl's birthday. Okay, so when does Albert know this event? We'll put Albert's bubbles in there. The only time that Albert knows this event is when the bubble is just around May 2nd. Okay, this is when Albert knows that Bernard doesn't know that Albert doesn't know Cheryl's birthday. Okay, clean up a bit. Cheryl's birthday must be May 2nd. Okay, so we're able to figure out this relatively complicated clause just by using our bubbles. Okay, so we learned about bubbles and then events and finally knowing an event. Now we can solve Cheryl's birthday and similar problems, so-called meta-knowledge problems, just by using diagrams and not thinking too hard. That is, you don't have to use complicated logical arguments. You can just use the diagrams and compute it by hand. It makes things much easier. Okay, thank you.